I grew up in the 90s, born in Cuba, immigrated around 88, 89. I was 4 years old. And I didn't even know I was going to be a musician until 95 or something, where I started playing guitar. But during the 90s, I remember uh, 99, 2000 is when I started working professionally. All of my colleagues, older friends, would tell me that, oh, New Year's gigs, usually pay back then $1,000, or New Year's gigs are the way to go, $1,200. Back then, gigs were paying when I was a kid, and this is really, really wrong, right? But somehow, in 20 years, 25 years, the gigs are still paying the same. So when I was a kid, I actually made way more money in terms of inflation, and the increase of the cost of living and everything else, and how the price, the pay for musician, the compensation for musicians has stayed the same. So we're actually being paid probably 100% less than before 20 years ago, when we should being paid twice as much. So now gigs are still paying $100. That's the minimum, Or even there are musicians that go out there in New York City that play for $50, $40, and that's okay for them, And these are probably younger musicians, granted, that are in school or whatnot, but I just think it's absolutely ridiculous and horrifying that musicians are being paid the same amount of money, and this goes down to, this is probably very well tied into the streaming thing, the whole Napster music piracy thing that happened at the turn of the century, where all of a sudden composers were, before that, they were making all this money from compositions because people actually bought records, right? And if you wrote a song for Celine Dion or whomever else, I had friends back home that were writing songs for high profile people like that, and they maybe they were overextending themselves financially, but they had a house in Kendall, they had a house in an apartment on South Beach with several high end vehicles, so there was a lot of money to be made, and now all of a sudden it imploded, and the only people that are making money are the people that were savvy enough, older people that are older than me, that were already very well established with the process that was in place in the 90s and before, 80s, 70s, which was very much you pay, you play, you pay, you pay, you play, or you play, you get paid. You write a song, then it's gonna with a composer, then it gets recorded, then you get a certain number. It was all very, very coherent, and even though the record labels were probably exploiting musicians, right, and taking all kinds of percentages from the recordings that they were either producing or helping produce, the musicians were still able to make some money, and not just from record sales or from royalties for artist composer royalties, but from live shows. There were many more touring bands. You're getting paid a lot more money per show than now. So all of a sudden it implodes, and the only people that are able to continue with this thing are the people that were savvy enough, that had already been in the industry for a while, saw it change, jumped on the wagon, and all of a sudden they were able to, not effortlessly, because it hasn't been effortless for anyone, but at least stay in the game competitively so that they can still make money with the debacle and the complete dysfunction of the system. So now, from my perspective, growing up through this, I've essentially been brought up in an industry that has been in shambles, where everyone is broke, no one's making any money. Only very few people are ultra successful in the industry. I'm lucky enough that through perseverance and hard work, I've been able to carve out a niche for myself, and I do very well as an instrumentalist. I play with all kinds of people. I play with famous people. I make good money, whatever it is. But the process and the laws that are in place are so antiquated that that musicians are amongst probably the most underpaid. I mean, I'm not sure how factual that is, but I would venture to guess that musicians and artists are probably amongst the most underpaid group in the workforce, which is really strange because everyone values music so much. People claim that they can't live without music, but they're not willing to pay for it. So what happens with the streaming services? Why I think they're so dysfunctional is because they're not charging consumers enough for the music. If you think back on the time when there were record stores, which I remember when Tower Records closed down and Virgin Records closed down. I was in New York. It was a very sad moment. I love those stores. I love being able to walk into a store and buy a CD, you know, or even be able to have a CD collection or a record collection. I mean, records are kind of popular now, but have something that's tangible, not this digital crap that gets downloaded onto your player. And it doesn't sound good. MP3s sound terrible, in addition to the fact, so it's not even enjoyable. So the price that consumers pay for these services is so low, and I'm sure that the companies are finding all these loopholes so they don't have to pay out musicians. I mean, if or composers. So if some of these we hear about this all the time where some famous pop star got a check for $1,000 from one of these people, from one of these companies, Spotify or whatever else, or YouTube, you know, for a song that that the video has, you know, I don't know, 80 million plays. So, but their payout is $1,000, or just to give you a number. I mean, that's absolutely absurd. That's just unacceptable. And the fact that it continues to happen without any major, you know, climactic change that makes an impact is absolutely even more ridiculous. But we all know how the laws work in this country. It's all in the favor of the companies. The companies are the ones that have all the money for lobbying and whatever else, and they're the ones that you know, that get these politicians to make decisions in their interest, unfortunately. And it goes all across the board. And I'm sure that the music industry isn't independent or isn't subjected to this type of dynamic. So the only way that I see this changing is if consumers pay per play. So if you really want to watch YouTube and just have unlimited plays, it should not be subscription based. Maybe you have a monthly fee, a low monthly fee just for your membership, but you still need to pay per play, whatever that is, whether it's $1 or $1 per song. That seems fair. Then there's a greater incentive for that person to buy the record. And that's what they should be doing. They should be buying records, not going on YouTube and playing whatever they want for free. Whether it's good or low quality, they're still getting the content. Charging the advertisers more is great, but the consumers are still paying so little money that it doesn't warrant what they're getting in comparison to how it was before. And considering that everything is 3 times or 4 times as expensive as 25 years ago, how is it that music is cheaper? How is that economically feasible? How is that functional? Where is that money coming from? Who's taking the money? The artists aren't taking the money. So one thing would be to incentivize consumers to spend more money on music. And if you don't like music, it's not important to you, but you claim it is, then you wouldn't mind not listening to music. You don't deserve to listen to music because you're not willing to pay for it. Why should artists spend their entire life practicing 12 hours a day for something they love in hopes of basically being broke and maybe even being on the street? How does that make any sense? How is that sustainable? Of course, the laws are antiquated. I mean, right? They just passed an act recently, but I don't even think that's up to date. And these laws are from the 20s, I think. They're extremely old, over like almost 100 years old when the recording industry just started. You know, and this phenomena I think has always happened. You know, composers in the turn of the century were worried that the phonograph was the advent of the phonograph was coming out. They were worried that people weren't going to pay for live performances anymore. And so it's history just repeats itself. I have no choice. I mean, I moved to New York with nothing, essentially with a guitar and an amplifier and some clothing and $600, and that's it. you know, and I've been able to sustain myself for 16 years and grow and make a career out of it, an incredible career. But I really do feel strongly that people need to pay more for music, you know, and it's absolutely ridiculous. I know that we have MP3 players, but it's absolutely ridiculous that it's acceptable to have 50, 80 albums on your player that you may not have even bought, you know, as opposed to owning 8 albums that you paid for, that you really enjoy, that you value more, and then you make your own playlist out of that. But it shouldn't be this unlimited access to music. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. It devalues music. And I don't think it's a matter of going back and saying that technology is wrong, but I think it's about regulating it. You know, it's not about, oh, let's go back in time, and no. Let's move forward, but it shouldn't be a free-for-all. It shouldn't be, it's basically free. Music is free. How is music free if it costs so much to make?